At exactly 21:47 hours local time on June 5, 2026, beneath a moonless sky over the Persian Gulf, 4 small silhouettes detached from a launch platform on the northern coast of Qeshm Island. They climbed in near total electronic silence. No IFF transponder signal, no active radar emission, no radio handshake. Just 4 Iranian Shahed-derived one-way attack drones, each packed with a shaped fragmentation warhead, threading through the night at 150 knots on a pre-programmed GPS kill corridor aimed directly at the throat of the Strait of Hormuz. 22 miles away, on the bridge wing of a U.S. Navy DDG, conducting routine maritime security operations, a junior officer's eyes locked onto a flicker on the AN/SPY-6V air and missile defense radar repeater screen. 4 faint contacts. Low, slow, and tracking southeast. His heart rate spiked. He already knew what they were. The order came in less than 4 seconds. This is CENTCOM. 4 one-way attack drones inbound. Threat classification, immediate. Rules of engagement, weapons free. What followed in the next 47 seconds was not war. It was a masterclass in automated lethality. This confrontation did not begin that night. It began on February 28, 2026, when the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, nearly 900 coordinated airstrikes in the first 12 hours alone, targeting Iran's nuclear facilities, ballistic missile production infrastructure, air defense networks, and key military command nodes. The GBU-57A/B, massive ordnance penetrator, buried itself deep into the underground enrichment halls at Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan. Decades of centrifuge assembly, advanced uranium enrichment, and clandestine weapons-grade material production were erased in a single night. But Iran was not finished, not by a long way. By June of 2026, the 2 nations existed in a grotesque twilight state. Technically under ceasefire, in reality engaged in a daily exchange of strikes, intercepts, and probing actions that one former CENTCOM analyst described as the world's most dangerous game of chicken being played with nuclear-adjacent weapons on the world's most critical waterway. Iran still retained, by President Trump's own estimate, approximately 21 to 22% of its pre-war ballistic missile inventory. The IRGC Navy had preserved its drone launch infrastructure, and the Islamic Republic's supreme military advisor had issued a chilling public warning just 48 hours before the June 5th attack. More strikes were coming, and they would be worse. The Strait of Hormuz, a 21 nautical mile wide channel through which approximately 20% of the world's traded oil transits every single day, had become the pressure valve for this conflict. Whoever controlled the surveillance radar picture over that strait controlled the entire chessboard. Iran knew this, and that is why the IRGCN had spent months quietly reconstructing and hardening 2 critical nodes: a coastal surveillance radar complex on Qeshm Island, Iran's largest island, sitting directly astride the tanker traffic lanes, and a second site in Goruk, a mainland coastal installation whose long-range maritime surveillance radars could track every naval vessel, every tanker, and every U.S. carrier strike group aircraft within a 400-kilometer radius. These 2 sites were Iran's eyes, and on June 5th, they ordered those eyes to open fire. Back aboard the DDG, the Combat Information Center had gone from routine watchkeeping to full battle stations in under 90 seconds. The AN/SPY-6 radar had already built full fire control quality tracks on all 4 drones. The Aegis weapons system, running the baseline 10 software suite, had automatically assigned intercept solutions and was screaming for weapons release authority. The watch officer gave it. The forward Mark 41 vertical launch system rotated into readiness. With a crack of exhaust and white smoke, 2 SM-2MR Block 3C Standard missiles leapt skyward from their cells, climbing at Mach 3.5. Simultaneously, the ship's close-in weapons system, the Phalanx Block 1B, spooled up its M61A1 Vulcan rotary cannon to a standby rate of 4,500 rounds per minute, its autonomous fire control radar already tracking the lead drone as a backup kill. The SM-2S needed the first 2 drones. The second pair of SM-2S, already in the air, took the third. For the fourth, the Phalanx acquired and fired a 200-round burst at 1,000 meters. The fourth drone disintegrated in a ball of shrapnel and cordite smoke, its fuse never triggered. Total engagement timeline: 47 seconds from first detection to fourth kill. But CENTCOM wasn't done. They were just getting started. Within 3 minutes of the drone intercepts, U.S. Central Command released a statement via official channels. 4 Iranian one-way attack drones had been shot down. The attack drones posed an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic. And then the critical sentence that sent shockwaves through Tehran. U.S. forces subsequently struck Iranian coastal surveillance radar sites in Goruk and on Qeshm Island to defend against further attacks. This was not a reactive slap. This was a deliberate, pre-planned kinetic response option. A pre-packaged strike that CENTCOM had been holding in reserve, targeting locked, awaiting exactly this kind of provocation. The moment the drones were in the air, the targeting solution for Goruk and Qeshm was already live. The strike platform has not been officially confirmed, but analysis of the engagement geometry and the precision of the effects strongly suggests Tomahawk land attack missiles launched from one of the 3 U.S. carrier strike groups then operating in the region, the most concentrated carrier presence in the Middle East in decades, supported by precision munitions delivered by F/A-18E/F, Super Hornets from one of the carrier air wings, potentially with EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft, suppressing any residual Iranian radar emissions during the approach. The Goruk facility went dark at 22:09 hours local. The Qeshm installation was destroyed at 22:11 hours. 2 critical nodes in Iran's maritime surveillance network, nodes that provided fire control quality targeting data to IRGC, anti-ship missile batteries, drone launch teams, and fast boat attack flotillas, were reduced to blackened rubble and twisted antenna arrays in under 3 minutes. Iran was now flying blind over its own coastline. And Iran's military commanders knew exactly what that meant. The IRGC response was not long in coming, but it was not surgical. It was furious, emotional, and fatally for Tehran, predictable. At 0024 hours on June 6th, U.S. and Kuwaiti air defense radars simultaneously lit up with a launch detection signature originating from western Iran. 7 ballistic missiles, assessed as variants of the Fateh 110 and Zulfiqar families, were airborne and tracking west toward Kuwait and Bahrain. The trajectories were clear. The intended targets were American forces at Ali al-Salem Air Base in Kuwait, the U.S. 5th Fleet Headquarters at Naval Support Activity Bahrain, and Kuwait's International Airport, a strike designed to maximize both military and civilian symbolic impact, precisely the kind of hybrid terror military attack that the IRGC had been rehearsing for years. Kuwait's Patriot PAC-3 batteries had already been queued. The THAAD battery operating in the region, one of the most advanced theater-level air defense systems in the U.S. inventory, was already in engagement mode before the Fateh 110s had cleared Iranian airspace, and the Aegis-equipped ships patrolling the Gulf had their SM-3 Block II A interceptors ready for long-range upper-tier kills. The engagement was brutal in its one-sidedness. 6 of the 7 Iranian ballistic missiles were intercepted. 1, confirmed by CENTCOM in its initial assessment, did not reach its intended target, assessed as either a guidance malfunction or a structural failure on re-entry. Not a single U.S. installation was struck, not one. But Kuwait's airport was not so fortunate. Earlier in the week, in a separate Iranian strike cycle that formed part of this coordinated escalation pattern, 1 person had been killed and 63 others injured when Iranian munitions struck Kuwait International Airport, damaging the terminal and triggering mass evacuations. It was the highest single-event casualty count among Gulf states since the beginning of this conflict, and it sent shockwaves through the Gulf Cooperation Council capitals. Iran's official media machine, running on a parallel reality track, immediately claimed that IRGC missiles had struck and damaged the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, a claim that CENTCOM flatly and immediately denied. There were no reports of harm to U.S. personnel. The Iranian claim was false, but the propaganda damage was already done in the regional information space, and Tehran knew it. What the Iranian public and most of the world did not know, and what CENTCOM analysts had been tracking since May, was the deeper architectural logic behind this escalation. These were not random retaliatory strikes. They were the visible surface of a coherent, desperate IRGC operational concept. Every time CENTCOM conducted a strike on Iran's naval infrastructure, Iran responded with a combination of drone and missile attacks designed to serve three simultaneous purposes. First, to impose economic costs by threatening maritime insurance and tanker passage rates through the strait. Every Iranian drone launched pushed global oil futures higher and reminded energy markets that 20% of the world's oil supply was hostage to this conflict. Second, to probe and map U.S. air defense response patterns, timing, and battery reload cycles, a form of kinetic intelligence collection in real time. Third, to maintain internal revolutionary legitimacy, to show the Iranian domestic audience that the regime was still fighting, still resisting, still alive. The radar sites at Goruk and Qeshm were not just surveillance installations. They were the sensor nodes for Iran's integrated anti-access/area denial architecture, the A2/AD bubble that the IRGC had spent 2 decades building to hold the strait hostage. With those sites destroyed, Iran's ability to execute coordinated anti-ship missile strikes against carrier strike group assets was degraded significantly. The fire control solution linkages that fed targeting data from coastal radar to shore-based anti-ship missile launchers were severed. Iran had just lost a critical portion of its remaining strategic leverage. As the early hours of June 6th stretched toward dawn, a different kind of operation was quietly underway beneath the surface of the Gulf. A U.S. Navy Virginia-class fast attack submarine, running at depth on the continental shelf east of Bahrain, had been shadowing an IRGC naval fast boat tender for 72 hours. The tender had been conducting logistics runs to a network of small IRGCN patrol vessels stationed near the Farsi Island area, vessels that had been operating aggressively in international waters, harassing commercial shipping and conducting what appeared to be rehearsal runs for a maritime blocking operation. At 0347 hours, a flight of MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, running dark under NVG conditions and radar emission controlled, departed from a classified forward operating platform. On board, a naval special warfare element equipped with maritime interdiction gear and operating under a legal package authorizing them to board and inspect vessels suspected of carrying weapons components in violation of the blockade that the U.S. had maintained since the ceasefire began. The boarding operation, conducted in international waters at 0412 hours, recovered material that CENTCOM described only as items of interest in a subsequent classified brief. 2 IRGCN personnel were detained. 4 attempted to resist. The resistance was brief. No U.S. casualties. The material was flown directly to a classified analysis facility within 90 minutes. What that material revealed will likely drive the next phase of this confrontation, and what it means for the nuclear negotiations that IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi had, just hours earlier, cautiously described as moving toward a preliminary framework, remains to be seen. As the sun rose over the Persian Gulf on June 6th, the Strait of Hormuz was still open. Tanker traffic was moving. Oil prices were elevated, but not catastrophic. The U.S. Fifth Fleet was intact. Kuwait's airport was damaged, but functional. And somewhere in Tehran, IRGC commanders were staring at blank screens where Goruk and Qeshm's radar feeds used to be. The ceasefire, that increasingly fictional construct that both sides referenced and neither fully honored, had survived another night. But just barely. The IAEA's cautious optimism about a nuclear framework agreement existed in a parallel diplomatic universe to the one where CENTCOM was releasing gun camera footage of burning Iranian radar installations. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the U.S. strikes as a clear violation of the ceasefire, while its military was simultaneously launching ballistic missiles at US allies. The contradiction was not lost on anyone in the region. This is the new normal in the Persian Gulf, a conflict that is simultaneously at ceasefire and at war. A confrontation that is simultaneously heading toward a diplomatic resolution and toward catastrophic escalation. A military balance in which the United States holds overwhelming conventional superiority. 3 carrier strike groups, the most powerful concentration of naval air power in decades, while Iran holds a single terrifying card, the ability to shut the Strait of Hormuz and trigger a global economic crisis before any of those carrier-based aircraft can prevent it. The 47-second drone kill was a demonstration of American capability. The Qeshm and Goruk strikes were a demonstration of American will. The ballistic missile intercepts were a demonstration of American endurance. But none of those demonstrations end this war. They only manage its temperature, and the temperature, as of this morning, is still rising. What would you do? If you were in the CENTCOM Operations Center, looking at a map with 3 carrier strike groups, a shattered ceasefire, a desperate Iranian regime with 21% of its missile arsenal still intact, and a narrow 21 nautical mile channel that keeps the global economy alive, would you push for the diplomatic framework, or would you end the A2/AD threat permanently before they reconstitute it? Leave your answer in the comments. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographic feature, it is a trigger, and right now, both fingers are on it. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never forget that the next 47 seconds could be the most consequential in global history.